Coming up right now on Lifestyle Magazine, Dr. Džon Mekdugal and the connection between diet and autism.
Our good friend Dr. Džon Mekdugal is back with us today, and he's going to talk to us about the connection between diet and mental health. So is there really a connection?
You know, people wouldn't think so.
No.
It's not very often discussed. I mean, they would think about things like maybe caffeine and how it affects their mind. And of course, that's why people consume caffeine, is because it's one of the last legal drugs.
And well-loved as
well. And well-loved, yes.
And also they get the connection with alcohol. But the food is, I mean, in the number of people's lives and the just the sheer bulk of what you eat compared to, say, caffeine or alcohol, the food is huge. And so if it did have an effect, it could be tremendous.
Right.
And actually, I know it is a tremendous effect. We see worldwide, when we look at various populations of people, we see a direct correlation with depression and schizophrenia and eating the Western diet. The diet high in meat and dairy, low in starches, vegetables.
Depression and schizophrenia.
And schizophrenia, both worldwide. And there's been research done for over 50 years on the connection between what we eat and depression, for example. Let me just give you a little background on how that works. There are what we call neurotransmitters, chemicals in the brain. And the proportions, the amount of these neurotransmitters depends upon what you eat. And people have probably heard about the amino acid tryptophan. The tryptophan gets into the body, it gets into the nervous system, and it makes serotonin. Serotonin kind of quiets the whole world around you, so everything's not so exciting. It relieves depression, it mutes hunger. It's a very important neurochemical. Well, here's where the connection comes. To get that tryptophan past what we call the blood-brain barrier, blood-brain, get it past this membrane, but it has to go through little gates. And those little gates, they're occupied by other heavy neutral amino acids. So tryptophan has to get in the gate to get through into the nervous system. Well, if you eat animal foods, I'm talking about beef, chicken, fish, dairy products, they occupy all the little gates. And now your tryptophan can't get through, and now you can't make the serotonin. As a result, you get depressed. So the components of the food make a huge difference in just the the basics. But there's another mechanism here too. It has to do with schizophrenia and autism. And it's a kind of an allergic phenomenon, or people have described it as almost a psychedelic type of reaction. You know, when people take magic mushrooms and LSD and things like that, they know these chemicals get into the brain and they stimulate things, and they cause people to have really changed perceptions, really bizarre thinking. Well, the food proteins do that too. Particularly food proteins, the ones that have been identified are those in milk. We're talking about cheese, and also in a group of plant foods that we identify as gluten, as high in gluten, which is an amino acid high in gluten. And those would be wheat, barley, and rye. So what happens is the gluten protein from the wheat, barley, and rye, and/or the casein protein from milk gets into the nervous system, and it acts like a drug. It acts like LSD, or
So I drink milk and I hallucinate.
Well, some people do. You see,
seriously.
Seriously, you do?
No, I'm saying seriously. That's a question.
Seriously, some people do, and it may not be the wild, bizarre hallucinations that we typically think about these powerful psychedelic drugs, but a subtle distortion of the environment, so much so that it's not subtle to those around you and for you dealing with the world. But you get this distortion because of these neuroactive peptides. That means neurologically active proteins that are found in wheat and also dairy foods. And may not happen to you, Gail, or to Mike, or to myself, but there are some sensitive people, and maybe those people are sensitive because their gut opens up and allows these proteins to easily get into the bloodstream. Or maybe something else about them is going on that we haven't identified yet. But for whatever reason, these people suffer terribly from eating certain kinds of foods. And the nice thing is people have discovered this. And it's not a well-known message, and I have to be very blunt as to why it's not well-known, is because there's no profit behind it. So you got all these drug companies out there that sell drugs for autism or schizophrenia, and they give you quizzes to see whether you're crazy or not, so that you can get into the market. And they sell all these drugs, and that's where everybody thinks it's at, is in the medications. It's not. The medications are of minimal benefit with serious costs, serious side effects. But a cure, and I'm really talking about a cure, for depression, schizophrenia, autism, and other mental problems can be had, and I believe by the vast majority of people, if
Simply
they
by
got
changing
this
the diet.
nugget of knowledge.
Yeah.
And so, you know, they don't eat the animal foods and they don't eat the gluten-containing foods. They eat a diet of potatoes and rice.
Absolutely fascinating. And Barry Silverberg knows what it's like to live with an autistic child. Barry, welcome to Lifestyle Magazine.
Thank you so much. I'm glad to be here.
Thank you for being here.
So when did you first notice that something was different with your child?
Well, probably as he got close to about 2 years old, his
Okay.
eating habits had changed.
Okay.
And in hindsight, after we found out he wasn't diagnosed till 6.5, so we had
Six
quite
and
a
a half.
struggle. Yes.
Okay.
Until we realized what was going on. He was having severe meltdowns. He would just throw himself to the floor and just scream. He had severe sensory issues. Couldn't stand loud noises, even with earplugs. It was still just, he was so hypersensitive to the hearing. He couldn't go outside without sunglasses. The lights were so bright.
Right.
Smells. If I would even be cooking onions or garlic or anything like that, he would just run upstairs and just screaming.
Oh, really?
He was in pain.
Everything was
He was in
sensitive.
pain.
You have other children in the house as well, right?
He was my firstborn.
Oh, he's your
he's
firstborn.
first.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
Firstborn.
Right.
So there was nothing to compare it to.
Exactly. And when it's your first child, you don't really know. And
Okay.
he was very rough and mean to other children too, but he was a boy.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
he was doing
Yeah.
boy things, you know.
And all kids have tantrums.
Absolutely.
Things.
Absolutely. And his diet, he was so restricted and only eating peanut butter and jelly and macaroni and cheese and
Right.
cheese and
And
crackers.
just would not eat other things.
Wouldn't touch
I
anything
see.
else. Didn't
I
want
see.
fruits, didn't want vegetables, and a lot of other foods didn't want to eat either.
Now
Did
he
you
was
just go at it and change the diet, or was it a slow process?
Well, I basically found a message board after I read this article in Parents Magazine about a woman who did this diet with her son. And then I went and I found this website and I started reading, and a lot of it was about drugs. And I said, I will not drug my child.
Yeah.
There's got to be another way.
Right.
And I've always believed you are what you eat. My mom's a retired dietitian, so I
Okay.
grew up
All right.
eating healthy and
All
knowing
right.
about the importance of food. And I learned more about this and started talking to some professionals. And they said, you know, you've got to take it all away. He'll starve. That's all my son eats. What do you mean? He lives on gluten. He lives on casein. And they said, he's addicted. It's
Addicted.
causing a reaction that the morphine, it's a leaky gut. It also affects your bowel system, your
Right,
gut.
right.
And it leaks into the blood system, the bloodstream, and goes up and causes this opioid reaction, like morphine. Who knew?
No.
no.
No. And John was asking, how did this happen?
Right.
Was he resistant to it?
Well, let me go back a little bit. We were told that he was so disruptive in the classroom, his behavior was just atrocious. He couldn't sit still. He screamed, he yelled, he threw things, he was violent. He was just nasty to be around. He would choke children for no reason.
And he was 6 years old.
He was 6.
Wow.
And they said he can't stay at the school anymore.
Oh, no.
And they even had a special ed program at that school. But they said he was too severe, that he couldn't even be in that program.
The program.
So we went and looked at several schools in our district. And one of the schools was for behavioral children who are autistic. And we walked in and they were stimming, which is flapping your hands, which often is very stimulating. That's why it's called stimming, that many of the autistic children do. Screaming, yelling. Majority of them were nonverbal. And we saw one table and they were giving them little prompts to try and give them rewards. What were they giving them? Dye-filled, gluten-free cereal. Later I would gasp at seeing this behavior, because dyes and preservatives are just as horrendous to our children, all children.
Is that right?
And I, in the back of my mind, remember reading that article, and I said, I have no choice.
Got to try the diet.
I've got to do the diet. And I started doing as much research as I can. And we first did milk, because he drank gallons and gallons and gallons of milk. He needed that high.
So you removed milk from his diet.
removed milk.
Okay.
3 days.
days
3
of
days.
taking away all the dairy. The meltdown stopped. The sensories improved. It was a miracle before our eyes. And then I thought, if this is great, let's do gluten.
Yeah, let's go for it.
And so I just substituted. I bought gluten-free cereals instead and gluten-free bread. And I went to Whole Foods and I said, look, he's been eating whole wheat. He's used to whole grains. What do we do? And they said, brown rice bread. Loved it. right away. We were so lucky. You know, it was just amazing. And so he just started eating more and more and more gluten and was getting better and better.
Gluten-free.
And gluten-free.
Gluten-free. Yes. And then about a month later, the proof was in the pudding. He went to a birthday party. And I didn't take him. His dad took him at that time. His dad was talking while not even paying attention. Ice cream cake, double whammy, was put right in front of him. He wasn't understanding it. It had only been a month.
Right.
Sure.
I'm going to eat it. Oh, my gosh. It all came back.
Is that right?
It all came back. He had
serving?
One
meltdowns,
serving?
the sensory issues, one piece of cake.
Is
He
that
went insane again.
Oh, my.
It's like taking a psychedelic drug.
That's right.
You know, I mean,
Wow. Wow.
Yes.
So after that, how long did it take to get
It lasted
back?
3 days.
Really?
He actually was out of control for 3 days. And I said, it's working.
Yeah.
It was just amazing, and it just got better and better as we took more and more things away. And then we still didn't get 100% of what we wanted. I said, what is it? Dyes and preservatives. So then I started investigating about dyes and preservatives. The worst one you can get is red number 40. It is horrible. They actually have taken it away in other countries. They're finding it to cause cancer. They're finding it to cause so many horrific
What
things
is that
in
in?
children. Almost everything. Cookies, cake, chocolates, vanilla frosting. You'd be shocked to read labels.
Is this hard for you when he's with other children, when he goes to school, when he's at parties?
He now is almost 13. He'll be 13 next
So
month.
he's able to manage
He
himself.
gets it.
All right.
He gets it.
understands.
He reads labels. He
And
reads
we're
labels
about out
and
of
he
time,
gets
but
it.
what is he like today?
He's in honors classes. In
No.
6th grade, he got straight A's and straight E's and fully included in fully regular education. He's in 7th grade and 8th grade honors classes.
Fantastic.
Oh, this is
B pluses,
tremendous.
A's.
Tremendous.
You know, he still has a few things that are still some problems,
Right.
but for the most part, most people don't even realize he's got problems.
I am so happy for you.
It's a
and you know
miracle.
what? I think there are a lot of people watching today who are going to find hope in your story. John, could you talk to us briefly about casein and gluten?
you know, just, you know, because Barry's son and tens of thousands of other children have gotten better by this simple maneuver should be enough. But of course, as doctors, as scientists, we want mechanisms. And it has to do with these proteins. These are biologically active substances. And as Barry mentioned, in some kids, and adults too, we call it schizophrenia in adults, but and we give it other names too. In some sensitive people, this protein gets intact through the gut wall into the bloodstream, where it is psychedelic. It's neuroactive peptide, we call it, and nobody has control. I mean, it's like if you took a drug, you would have that kind of effect. And the solution is so simple. And that's to make a dietary change. But
all the difference for you and your family and your son especially, hasn't it?
Absolutely. And, you know, people who have known him since he was young have seen such changes through the years and just vast improvements. And the sensory issues are 100% gone.
Thank you, Barry. We have greatly appreciated what you've shared. And John, as always, thank you for being with us as well.